Hi everyone, I'm Adam. Like you said, I'm first year. I served in Mali in a little village called Congo, about 600 people and 2,000 goats. And right about where Mali is in West Africa, if you're not familiar with it. I actually had to look it up on the map when I found out where I was going to be sure where I was going. It's right about where the desertification is taking place for the lower part of the Sahara Desert, so pretty arid region. I wanted to, I guess, tell a story about early on in my service, and if any of you are considering going into the Peace Corps, the first few months are like incredibly exciting and like crazy and nerve-wracking. And every country does it pretty different. In Mali, you get 2 months of in-service training before you get placed in your village. And so all 80 of us fly in at the same time. We get off the plane, there's a bunch of welcomes, it's like midnight in Mali. They shuttle us into our compound, which is just outside the capital. And it's just a bunch of like huts and stuff where we have like 2 or 3 roommates and whatnot. And then you get like a 2-day crash course on everything you need. Or I guess it's a 5-day crash course on like everything you need to like survive if you're cut off from everybody. You know, it's like, what I call it, like walking around language or like emergency language. Like there's where, what is that, what's your name, where is something, that kind of stuff, and they give you the crash course in that, because then like 5 days after you get there, you get dumped off in your homestay village where you do a weekend of training, or you do most of your in-service, pre-service training in your homestay village. And so 5 days after you get to Mali, you're dropped off in your homestay village where you stay with the host family, and there's other volunteers at other compounds in the village. But once you find out who your host day is and they do a little celebration, everybody goes to their different houses and it's just you and this family. And at least in Mali, they only spoke Bambara. French is the national language, but outside of the bigger cities and people who have been beyond like to high school and beyond don't really speak French. And so all we really had was that crash course emergency Bambara. And you're like the star of this family and everybody and all the surrounding compounds, their family and friends. Everybody's around, sitting around. In Mali, you have a tea ceremony like all the time. So you're sitting around having tea and it's dark out and you're trying to think of how to talk to this family in Bambara in the dark with no electricity, no like TV or anything, just trying to create conversation while like 20 people are staring at you and you only know like 100 words or something like that. So basically what you do, or at least what all of us at my homestay did, is you just kind of like ask, who's your mom, who's your dad, who's your uncle, and who's your sister, and the words you have, and you point to stuff and you go, what is that, and what is that, and, or like, what do you call sandal? Oh, sambra, you know. And so we're doing that, sitting around, chatting, and just pointing at stuff, asking what it's called, and have nothing to say really all that interesting, so I like point up at the moon, like, oh, what's that? It's like, oh, it's the moon. And then somebody goes, oh, do you have, it's Calo Bay America? And it's like, do you have the moon in America? And I'm like, yeah, we have the moon in America. And, you know, and it goes on like that for like 2 days, and it's just kind of a whirlwind. And then you all get back together at your training facility for another week and a half or so to learn all sorts of skills that you need for your sector. Mine was water and sanitation, so brick building and digging latrines and stuff like that. And I'm chatting over lunch with some other volunteers, and somebody goes, did they ask you if you have the moon in America? And I was like, yeah, that's really weird. And somebody else was like, yeah, they asked me too. And we were just all like, that's crazy. I guess they didn't realize we had the moon in America. And, you know, we go back to our homestays and we get better at language. We actually like have 6 hours a day of language class every day in the town center with 2 Malian trainers. And you become pretty good at whatever the language is, just because that's all you speak for each day. And then after 2 months of that, you get dropped off in your site and you're supposed to start getting to know people and eventually within a year or so start working. And that time can go by really fast and really slow, and you have a lot of downtime, and you have a lot of spurts of really busy time. And in that downtime, for some reason, I don't know if I was flipping through a language book or just thinking back, reflecting on homestay, and I was like remembering that conversation where I was pointing to stuff and asking what stuff what's called, and it's like, oh yeah, I remember when they asked about the moon, and they asked me if I had the moon in America, and I'm like, wait, I said Yang, because that's what they taught us, how to ask what something is called in like our emergency bambara, and I'm like, that means what is that? I'm like, how do you say it? Sabe fo chokadi, you know, like how do you say this? And I was like, all of us were probably just pointing to the moon and asking, what is that? At best we were saying, what's that called? Because we learned like, what's your name? You know, what's that called? I mean, we weren't asking how do you say the moon in Bambara. And at first I was like, I thought it was funny, and it was pretty funny. And then I was like kind of embarrassed at like at myself for, I don't know, because you go there to help, and mostly what people do is you go there to teach, whether or not you're a health volunteer or any other type of volunteer. You're teaching a lot, and so you come with this attitude that like there are people who aren't educated, and you're going to educate and help, and that's how progress is made. And just like all of us when we were talking about that, did they ask you if you had the moon? Like, just this assumption that like they were asking us if the moon was in America because maybe they weren't educated, they didn't know that the moon circles around the sun, when really, just as likely, probably more likely, they just didn't understand, or it was a misunderstanding in the way we were asking it. And not that it took anything away from my experience or anything, but I wish I was surprised that was my reaction, to assume that it was an education thing and not a misunderstanding started on my part. And I guess I was thinking of like how to tie this, sorry if I'm going long, how to tie this maybe into my current experience, and I was thinking of this idea of like walking around language or like emergency language, and how you really can't get anything all that effective done with it, and it's kind of a similar situation of what led me here to UMSI is I was at work for 2 years with the federal government in a division that doing something that I was pretty interested. It wasn't necessarily my passion, but I was pretty interested in it, and I wasn't doing exactly what I wanted to do. And when I told my boss, like, I'm considering this offer from Michigan, he's like, all right, you can't tell other people this, but this is my plan for the division, basically to rework this whole division into like a data analytics division, which I would be like the head GS level for, and basically be in charge of it. And I'm like, well, I've taken some stats classes in my other program, and I've taken some Coursera classes, but like, I feel like I just have that like walking around knowledge, and like I could probably fake it, and I could probably do contracts and stuff like that for it, but like to really do the type of work that I want to do, like I need to have more than just that crash course in the language to get around, you know, like I wanted to be able to actually do any change. It's like really takes over a year in your service to really understand what people are saying, why they're saying it, what their motivations are, why things work, why things don't work, that kind of stuff. Or maybe even really never if you don't try very hard. And that was kind of what led me to basically turn down a promotion to come here, because I wanted to have that depth of knowledge about the analytics type stuff I'm studying here. And so I don't know if it was necessarily a lesson learned because of that Peace Corps service, but it's definitely a theme that pops up again and again. And I don't know if that's the official ending of my story.